friend work as an editor for a newspaper. During a discussion on challenges in various professions, I told her that we have to prepare several lectures and keep the teaching interested in keeping students hooked every day. The learning outcome of class and students is the measure of our performance as teaching. Further into the discussion, I commented to her that your domain is comfortable. You need to just correct or modify the news that is already in the format or shape. I told her that you decide what to publish and what not be, like an authority. She replied, yes, I could decide what to publish and what not to, trim the items. However, it is not so easy. It is basically teamwork. Every day is a performance judgment day for an editor. Despite a lot of hard work as an editor and the entire team, there is every chance that the reader may reject or ignore the news or editorial. So basically, in this profession, you face a challenge every day. After a long conversation and hearing about various challenges and situations, I realized that being an editor is not easy. I also understood that you need to have a creative mind, an eye for detail, and love of language for being a successful editor. At the same time, you should be capable of quality writing for all different types of media. I hope that you would second my opinion that becoming an editor of popular media is a tough task and only a few can attain this position. Dear learners, today I am here to discuss the role and responsibilities of an editor. This lecture will give an overview of the functioning of a newspaper, editors and their duties, role of an editor, editorial departments, and duties of sub-editor to some extent. Through the previous lecture, you know about the concept, principles, and many other aspects of editing. Before moving forward, let us recap what editing is. Editing is transforming a well-written piece of a story into a readable and literary work, beautifully presented with effective communication, delivering the same message and similar intent. And the person who does this work is called an editor. An editor shapes and enriches the text by incorporating valuable information, improving and reviewing the content according to the reader's interest. He is the one who is in charge of a newspaper or magazine and is ultimately responsible for what to publish or not. Hence, the editors plan, revise and coordinate material for publication in newspapers, magazine, books or websites. Before going into the depth of an editor's roles and responsibilities, let us first try to understand the scope of his or her work. A publication center or house will publish 3 or 4 editions from the same place. The first edition is known as DAC 1, is printed at 9 p.m. to send to far off places, and the deadline is 8 p.m. to be completed at the editorial department. The deadline means that the last page from the editorial section is signed off. It indicates that the DAC 1 can go for printing. Similarly, DAC 2 has a deadline of 11 p.m. The paper should be signed off in the editorial department at 10 p.m. to enable printing the paper. The third edition, known as the city edition, will have a deadline of 2 a.m. and city editor or chief sub-editor and a team of copy editors extensively work till 1 a.m., adding all the late night developments and incidents. When elections are around the corner, the city editor works hard to bring out special supplements. You see that an editor needs to coordinate with the editorial department personnel to bring out various editions and sections in a daily newspaper. Let us see another dimension of it. Each newspaper has its character because of its size, presentation of news, and treatment of news stories. Broadly, newspapers are divided into two categories such as allied and sensational newspapers. Allied newspapers cover serious news and sensational newspapers devote news coverage to non-serious issues. For instance, the Hindu and the Statesman are considered allied newspaper in India that focus on serious issues for India's reader. All newspapers have two primary divisions: the business and editorial operations. The business side looks after the financial affairs and bring in the revenue for the newspaper. The primary source of income for the newspaper are advertising through display ads, classified government notice, etc., and circulation through retail sales or subscription. At the same time, administration and production like the cost of machinery, newsprint, building infrastructure, etc. are its source of expense. The top manager of the newspaper or the owner usually are known as the publisher and general manager. The publisher is usually the owner of the publication. The publisher looks after the business operation while the editors supervise the editorial operations. The general manager directs day-to-day business operation and is primarily responsible for advertising, circulation and production. The general manager coordinates with the top editors to determine the editorial department budget. In contrast, the editorial side gather and process information and convert the bulk of the information into news, thus making the paper what it is. The editorial department consists of reporters, sub-editors and all other staff that produce the newspaper's news content like gathering, writing news and edit stories, handling photographs and preparing a final selection of news for printing. A newspaper organization can have specialists but not necessarily one at the top as the editor. Learners, you can call the editor as the boss of the newspaper, who is ultimately responsible for what is published. Editors oversee the work of all the newspaper staff. They allocate space for articles, photographs, advertisements, and decide which story make it into each edition. Editors are responsible for the newspaper's editorial voice and often write editorial leaders, opinion pieces placed in the editorial section, usually at the end of the new pages. The editor of a newspaper needs to maintain good coordination and mutual understanding within the organization where he or she works. At the same time, they need to maintain good relation with all the source of revenues. A newspaper can be published when all section or departments coordinate with each other timely.